This will be a Royal Commission into abuse, neglect, violence, intimidation against people with disability, and it's very much expected to look at what's happened historically over many years, and it will be a wide-ranging examination. Now, it's very important that we get the terms of reference right. That's why we're commencing consultation today on the draft terms of reference. So these are not the final terms of reference, these are the drafts that we're consulting on. People can provide their feedback by going to engage.dss.gov.au, and they have until 28 March to do that. So I encourage people to do that because we want to get these terms of reference right so that the Prime Minister is in a position to go to the Governor-General and advise that he commence a Royal Commission. We're methodically doing the necessary work in terms of the terms of reference, who the Royal Commissioners would be, and of course all the other necessary elements, including critically consulting with the states and territories.
The negotiation period doesn't seem to be very long. It's only until the 28th of March. Is that because you've already had some discussions about these draft terms of reference with the relevant stakeholders?
Look, we have already commenced consultation with, for example, the disability peak bodies. 5 of them came to Canberra for a meeting early last week, and we shared an early draft of the terms of reference with them and sought their feedback. On Friday, I met with the state and territory ministers with responsibility for disability to seek their feedback on the terms of reference. So we have already been consulting, but now we go into this very important phase where any interested Australian, whether you're an Australian with disability or not, can offer your feedback by going to engage.dss.gov.au, and you have until the 28th of March to provide that feedback.
And what about the definition of disability? Because it can be a term that can be widely interpreted, and there are various forms of disability, as we know. What does this cover, the proposed Royal Commission into disability? What types of conditions or various forms of disability will be covered?
We've sought to make the definition as broad as possible in the draft terms of reference, covering both intellectual impairment and physical impairment. But of course, these are terms of reference for consultation. So if people feel through the consultation process that it has not been scoped sufficiently widely in terms of who's included, then we want to hear that feedback.
Now, the Greens have been pushing for this Royal Commission for some time. Jordan Steele-John has welcomed the broad draft terms of reference so far, but questioned why there is not a term of reference specifically regarding redress, like we saw in the Child Sex Abuse Royal Commission. Why is that the case?
Well, the whole point of consultation is to allow people to offer their feedback. So we want to wait and see what feedback people come back with in relation to the draft terms of reference, and if people think there are issues that have not been included, now is the opportunity to raise that.
And what about the commissioners? Will there be one commissioner or multiple?
There will certainly be more than one, and we're obviously working through a process now in terms of identifying possible Royal Commissioners. We need to look at considerations like having somebody with lived experience of disability. We obviously need somebody with eminent legal experience. So there'll be more than one commissioner, and we're working through who those might be. I asked for nominations from state and territory governments at my meeting with state and territory ministers last Friday. And of course, we'll work through that over coming weeks.
But can you confirm that at least one commissioner will have a lived experience with a disability? Because this is important to disability advocates, that at least one of the commissioners will have that lived experience.
Look, we are certainly conscious of the importance of having a commissioner with lived experience of disability. Obviously, what we need to go through and look at is who's available, who are suitable candidates, the different types of experience and background they have. And so we need to go through that process. I'm not going to prejudge that, but we're absolutely aware of the importance of having somebody who's got lived experience of disability.
OK, let's go on to the cost of this, Minister. Now, Scott Morrison has announced today that the Commonwealth will fully fund this Royal Commission. This is after the government sought a potential cost-sharing arrangement with the states and territories. Which states or state didn't want to stump up the cost for this?
Oh, look, I'm not really going to get into the intricacies of who said what. What I will say is you'd expect any fiscally prudent and responsible Prime Minister, as Prime Minister Morrison certainly is, to at least ask the question of state and territory governments. I would also say that there's going to need to be significant in-kind support provided, and I think you'll see some of that coming from state and territory governments. But the other point I'd make is this: we're doing the systematic work of identifying what this will cost to make sure it is fully funded. You know, Mr Shorten, when he spoke about this issue in the Parliament a couple of weeks ago, pulled a number out of the air of $26 million. That would be manifestly inadequate. We know that the Royal Commission into Institutional Child Sexual Abuse cost over $400 million. We know that the Royal Commission into Aged Care that we commenced a few months ago, we've allocated over $100 million for.